How are we framing this conversation?
I think that we all have obstacles, and I was debating on calling it excuses because it's harsh, but it's also true that we make up reasons why we can't do things. Limitations. There's a lot of different words for it.
Yeah.
But I think obstacles are a good word because we have we have the ability to work around them, work with them because there's always going to be challenges that come up, right?
Yeah, we were talking about this before. Like Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way. Um, that's like the hardest thing to remind yourself and the most useful thing. Uh, I catch myself reminding myself this all the time. This idea that we look at obstacles as if something is wrong, but it's it's actually not the case. If we did not have obstacles, we would be bored out of our fucking minds. Nothing in life would be meaningful or exciting. Yes, you can have an obstacle that's too much for you right now. But for the most part, you don't always get to choose what obstacles life throws you. So if you approach it with the mindset that no matter what the obstacle is, I'm going to look at it as an opportunity to to grow and well, yeah, I'm going to look at it as an opportunity to grow and get better from this challenge rather than looking at the challenge as a hindrance to my ability to move forward in the world. It's actually a requirement for me to move forward in the world. And so I think framing this conversation like that is very important. Is that this is not like, oh my God, I just want to get this thing done. And so how do I get these other things out of my way? It's no, these are things that we've found in our lives have been problematic. And they're actually only problematic when we look at them that way. But when we look at them like, oh, this is a challenge that I need to confront. And not only will confronting it help me get to my goal that stands behind it, but I'll get better. So then the next challenge or the next obstacle that comes up, it looks a lot smaller relative to how this one looked because I've gained new skills over taking the first one head on. And, you know, you're either going under, you're going around, you're going over, you're going through, but that's dependent on the situation.
Well, and anticipating that obstacles are going to come up because you can't say, I'm going to start this new goal and work towards it and just expect everything to work out. Even if you have a plan that you've set up, things are going to come up that maybe you didn't expect. So you're not going to expect every single challenge that's going to come up, but you're going to have the expectation that challenges will come up. So that you need to be dynamic and flexible and work around those. And just realizing that.
In the words of Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And like that's life. It's like you have great plans and then life punches you in the face and now what? You know? Now, talking about framing this conversation is not for listeners, it's for us because we need to remember this because we're human like everybody else. And even within this conversation, I already know that I'm going to fall into the trap of thinking of these obstacles as problems rather than opportunities, right? And so for life, we need to remember this, but also like just for this conversation, framing it, I think is very important so that we remember that we should be excited that we get to discover where where we have problems. I think the biggest obstacle that I've attempted to and have moderately successfully overcome this year is limiting self belief. Um, I basically lived my whole life with this idea that like I'm here and respectable, successful people are over there. And it's kind of the way that you look at a celebrity, where you think they're over there and we're the normal people and we'll never attain that, which is like, you probably won't like that, that uber level of stardom. Um, Not that that's something I would ever desire, but that feeling that the normal person gets when you look at someone that's like a Matthew McConaughey, that's absolutely like an untouchable level of stardom that 50 people on the planet get to experience. um that was always how my mind framed, like, literally anybody who was respectable. Like, I just always had this um we've talked about this before, where I would do what's called like social subordination, which is I walk into a social situation and I always assume everybody else is more likable, everybody else is more respectable, everybody else works harder, everybody else is smarter. Even though that there's a paradox there, because I also would, am insecure. So I would have all these, insecurity behaviors where you would think I'm being very arrogant and confident and all that stuff. It's like trying too hard, but that's what happens. It's a compensation, because really deep down, I always believed that I wasn't a person who could ever achieve that. And so now, this past year of starting a business, trying to expand the business, starting the podcast, um, having a child on the way, it's like I've really taken this head on, and I've convinced myself that I was wrong. And so, how did I do that? I think it comes down to how Alex Hermosi frames confidence, which is giving yourself undeniable proof that you will do what you say you're going to do. And I think the best the best advice I have so far that I can give myself from experience is small things. Give yourself small wins reliably. Say you're going to do something, do it. It doesn't have to be huge. Just say you're going to do it and you do it. And the more that you can just create those small wins and those repeated bouts of I had a I said I was going to do something, I did it. Said I was going to do something, I did it. You build up that list, you build respect for yourself. And I think that that's the core to self-limiting beliefs, is not this stand in the mirror, I'm beautiful affirmations bullshit. It's start with action.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a common trend in this podcast. I can already see. Because a lot of the obstacles can be overcome by just taking action, right? Like a lot of what happens in our life is more towards the mental side, like it's limiting beliefs or it's not having motivation. And the answer to it is starting with action, right? It's always action, showing yourself that you can actually show up and do what you said you're going to do and build that trust in yourself. And that's how you gain that confidence and the momentum to actually follow through on the things that you say you want to do. Yeah, so I guess just going off of that, like another common obstacle that everyone faces is not having motivation. Um, Oftentimes we start with motivation when we have like a goal or something that we want to do. That's really important, right? You need that initial motivation to kind of like kickstart you towards a direction of making change. You know you want to do something, you have that uh a little bit of a fire in you, like, okay, I need to do this. I need to start a new workout routine, I need to start a new diet, I need to lose weight, whatever your goal is. You have that motivation. um, but that we all know it doesn't stay around, right? We all have that like New Year's resolution energy. The beginning of the year, you have like your resolution. You're like, I'm gonna do this new, weight loss program, and it always dies down, right? Your motivation to complete it or to continue it always dies down. Um, so what's important to think about when you don't have motivation is finding your why, like finding your reason for why are you doing whatever your goal is, right? Actually write it down. Like write it down, like post it on your fridge, post it on your wall, whatever. Because the days when you don't want to get up and go to the gym, or you don't want to meal prep, or you don't want to eat a certain meal, you have a craving, you need to have that reason for why you want to do what your desired goal is, right? Um, and in finding your why, that's going to give you enough of the energy that you need to create those small actions, right? So if your goal is to go to the gym like 3 times a week and you have no motivation, you've let's say you've done your 2 workouts and you're like, I just don't have any motivation to go for the third time. Well, if you look at your why and you really think about why you want to go to the gym, get fit, gain muscle, lose weight, whatever your goal is, when you think about your why, that might give you enough energy to put your gym clothes on, put your shoes on, get in the car, go to the gym, just get yourself there. And then that action will create that momentum to continue on.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection before you said that. Like I knew you were going to talk about doing the action, but that's not something that I always remember is like if you don't have motivation, like this I definitely know. So if you don't have motivation, you start doing the thing. The motivation will come or maybe it won't, but it doesn't matter because you had to do the thing. So if you get it done, that's what's important. And more often than not, motivation comes after action, not before. Like you said, generally when you want to do a new thing, it starts with motivation, but then that fades. Then how do you continue on boring normal days with that same intensity? You don't actually. That's the trick is you don't have that same intensity. And that's what you said is so important is to do the actions before you're motivated. You need to have that why because I mean, like we've talked about this. I've told this to so many people. It's overwhelming how much of a motivator the thought of being a loser dad is. Like traditionally I've been a pretty hard person to get into motion. Um limiting self-belief. Um I have tended to be the person that, is lazy. I actually don't really believe that anymore. Um but there has been nothing that gets me moving, even if I don't have any of that intrinsic motivation, than the idea of you're going to be a loser dad. And like, it almost does not matter how I feel. If I have that thought, I will move forward. I will start working. So that's like super important detail of that is always knowing what your why is so that you can use that to bump you up when you're not feeling motivated. By far the most ubiquitous excuse for anything. I don't have time. Um, so how do you deal with this? I think the first part is understanding that I don't have time means I'm not prioritizing it, which is fine. Be honest with yourself. You can't prioritize everything. So if you want to say, I'm not doing this right now because it's not one of my priorities, then start with that because that's an honest statement. Saying I don't have time is bullshit. Um, Especially because I can ask almost anybody for their phone, and I can go to their settings, and I can look at their screen usage time, and I can probably find them 4 to 6 hours of time, right? Like, I can't remember what the average is. I don't know who I was listening to recently. They were talking about screen usage, and Jonathan Haidt, I think, and I think the average time I can't remember the number,
Well, it
so I
was
won't say them.
almost more than a 8 hour sleep.
Oh yeah, who's saying that?
I'm not sure, but it
God,
was it startled me because it was like people are not prioritizing their sleep. They're actually going on their phone just as long as they
yeah,
sleep
more
or
hours in a
more.
day than what they get in bed, which is bananas. So, which is obviously more than 4 hours. It's like nine
Yeah.
hours or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. But anyways, this isn't about phone shaming. Understand that you can only prioritize a certain amount of things in the day, and under so sort your priorities out and do it honestly and do it seriously. Like really look at your life. What do I want? And how do I need to prioritize this? And just that alone will start to free up time for things that you actually want to do. Um, the next thing that's very counterintuitive about not having time is decreasing the window of time you have to do something. Like everybody's heard this phrase, if you want something done, get a busy person to do it. And I cannot tell you psychologically why this works, but if there's like a rule in productivity science, which is like you've told me this, which is you will do something in the amount of time you have to do it,
Yeah.
right? So if you have 3 weeks to finish an assignment, it's going to take you 3 weeks. If you have 2 days, it'll take you 2 days. And so take something that you absolutely want to do and put it on the busiest day of your week. It sounds stupid. Try it. I can say from experience, the least productive I ever am is when I wake up in the morning and I have all day. The most productive I am this morning, right? We get up this morning. I know before 10 o'clock in the morning, I need to get up. We need to prep for the podcast. We need to set up the podcast. We need to record the podcast. We need to eat breakfast. And so I got up this morning and I also found out that we kind of left the kitchen a mess last night. And so, like, instantly, kitchen's clean. If I would have woken up and had all day on a day off, that kitchen would have been dirty until 1 in the afternoon for sure, unless I had in my head that I wanted to, start the day off and then do that. But like,
Choosing the hard thing first, right? If you know you have
right.
a lot of priorities to get done during the day, um, we're naturally, I think, more productive in the morning, or we have the most energy, right? If you got a good night's sleep, um, you wake up at a good time, you start your day doing the most difficult thing first and getting that out of your way, like creates this win, right? And then everything else in the day seems easier. And you're just once you start that momentum, like I found like when I started my day going to the gym at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, I don't do that anymore. Um because I do have time to work out a little bit later in the day, which I do prefer, but if you're a first thing in the morning going to the gym, that just starts your day so much better. Like you have energy. If that's your hard thing, whatever your hard thing is, just do it first,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And nothing bothers you after you just crush a hard workout. At least your threshold goes way up. It's so much harder to to be bothered by life because you have that contrast of I've done the hardest thing, and so everything else is comparatively easy.
Yeah, you're less bothered, if you spill something on the ground or, like you're running a little bit behind or something
Yeah.
like that. Like you just make it work. You're not as I guess, stressed out, or you don't get stressed out as easily, I find.
Yeah, I've never actually paid attention to if if that's the same for doing like a difficult task that's like computer work, like versus going to the gym. Because normally in that case, we are using like going to the gym first to get that out of the way. And so you have the actual benefits of exercise on your brain for what
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like being less stressed and less bothered.
I
I'm trying to
can,
think.
well, I can definitely relate to that because I was, for the past year, really focused on um, learning certain um, computer skills. And I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd do a cold shower, I'd do my meditation. And, by 5:30, I was like starting to do skill work, and I would do that for a couple of hours. And after that, I just felt like full of energy because I was using my brain. Like, it wasn't like I was
Right.
moving. I wasn't prioritizing movement at that time because my goal was to get better at the skill that I was trying to learn.
So
Um,
you do feel like whatever you're starting the day with, if it's a challenge and something important, that you get that boost of like, oh, now the rest of the day seems like. I guess if I think about it, I feel the same. Like even just this morning, I got up right after it, cleaned the kitchen, prepped the podcast, and it's like by the time we were going for a walk, I was already like firing on all cylinders. Not even that it was particularly hard to do what I did, but just the action of getting right to work, you know.
yeah, I think it's important to prioritize, right? You even if you have different things going on, try to prioritize that hard thing first.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't realize before you blended those together, like not having time and doing the hard thing first. One actually solves the other
Mm-hmm.
because if you do the hard things first, a lot of your time is wasted just dragging your feet to do the thing you don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
And what's the Alex Hormozy quote about like people starting a business? It's like people take, maybe he took this from someone else, but it's like people take 10 months to do the first 10 minutes, right? And we do that on a micro level every day. We find every excuse to not do the thing we have to do.
Well, to bring it back to our podcast, like we started this podcast initially last November, so not quite a year, but almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And things came up, right? We didn't prioritize it, and it has taken us almost like, 8, 9 months to like actually make this a commitment and sit down and say that we're going to do it every week, and we're doing it.
So what was the obstacle? Why why did we start the podcast and then stop doing it? Like we can list the things that happened. Like we got married basically,
Yeah, the wedding planning
right?
was huge.
Wedding planning, and
And then it was just the holiday
then it
season
was
and we
Christmas
we
and
were
like,
working. And
but there's got to be something deeper. Like it was like we weren't committed even when we started.
well, we considered the podcast almost like a different business
Mm-hmm.
because you were starting Recharge Health, which is our massage clinic, and that was the primary like focus at that time. And the podcast was kind of like a side thing, like it's more of like our passion project rather than
Right.
like this is our main business. So we weren't as
I think it was missing passion.
yeah, well maybe.
For, like if I think back to it, it's like I don't feel like we were that committed like we are now.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think that was? Do you think it was like a belief thing?
No, I think we weren't prioritizing it.
Yeah,
I think it's very simple. It the things that you want to do, you have to choose that you want to do it
yeah.
and then fit them in your life.
Well, we're doing it now, so
Yeah, like also the thing too, like was going through a different career change and I had different goals. Like I said, my goals were like working on the computer and gaining these skills to, excel in my career. So I personally wasn't super motivated to do this podcast at that time. Um, Health has always been like a passion for me, but during that time I was like, okay, I'm prioritizing this other thing right now. Health is kind of on the back burner, which I hate saying because it always should be like one of my top priorities, but it wasn't at that time.
Mhm.
And that's why we really didn't focus on it at that, you know, in the initial like few months. Like, what did we recorded like a couple of podcasts? No, they were more practice. We weren't taking it seriously. We weren't taking it seriously,
Yeah.
which uh is probably another obstacle, right? Like if you want to do something, you actually have to commit and do it. Like the amount of videos that we watched over this last year, like a lot of Alex Ramosi, because he always says, do the action,
Yeah.
prove to yourself that you can do it. And I just had to hear that so many times to actually get it in my head, and I think you did too, where we weren't we were just like recording it and then um not posting it. We're like, we're just gonna practice
And once
until
we
we
did
get
that, once we did
confidence.
that once, it was just like, well, now if we don't like it, then we don't post it. And we didn't like any of them because, of course, we sucked. We just started,
We sucked.
so it's like we trapped ourselves there. So
Well, and even now, like we're not good at this. I don't feel like I'm good at this, and I'll bring that up to the next obstacle is like being scared to fail or being embarrassed. That was our that was our big obstacle at the beginning, right? Like we didn't want to post it for people to think that we didn't know what we were talking about or you know just not good as at speaking like other people that we watch are, and
right.
that we're not good enough to post this. But how do you get better? Like how did those other people get better? They've been doing it for years, right? The amount of podcasts that they've put out or videos or speaking events or whatnot, like they've put out hours and hours and hours of that, and we're comparing ourselves to that. Like,
Yeah. What does the path look like to getting to the other side of that experience?
yeah, just using this example of, well, I think both of us, but maybe more me, because I'm not super comfortable talking on video. Maybe some people can remember if they've seen me before. I did have a YouTube channel. I maybe posted like 20 videos back, maybe 8 years ago. Um, of doing like full day of eating videos or workouts when I first started working out, and I had lost um a fair bit of weight over like a 3 month period, and I was really killing it in the gym, and with meal prepping and everything, like I had everything like locked in and I was making videos about it, but I was so insecure about posting every single video and never got over that. And it's still the same now, where like I don't want to sit down and record these podcasts because I feel like I'm super awkward. um, but I'm still doing it, like just showing up, right? Just doing the thing you're scared to do anyways, and proving yourself over time that you can get better at it.
Do you think it's a external versus internal validation problem? Is that a fair way to that's kind of what I got from what you said was like basically the worry was about the external, which is people seeing me talk, and the solution was I proved to myself that I could just do it.
Yeah,
And if I keep
I
doing it, then I'll be better at it. Um, is that fair? Like, do you think that?
yeah, like changing the focus from getting that external validation and people accepting you or, not
Mm.
rejecting you, always having the focus that way, you're you're always going to feel insecure because you're not going to please everyone. And if that's your goal, then uh yeah, you're just always going to be worrying about what people think. And if you change that to what do I think of myself? And also, if I want to do something, what would the version of myself be like who does those things?
Yeah.
Because everyone is very capable of doing, I don't want to, it's so cliche, like you can do anything, but you can, though. Whatever you want to set your mind to, um you just have to imagine yourself being that person that does those things and then start doing those things. And then you're going to prove to yourself and then you're going to prove to yourself that you can do it. And it's
So this loops back perfectly, and this is a good way to end it because it brings it all back. Is I could never do that before because the self-limiting belief that I could never be that person didn't allow me to actually do that visualization. For honestly, like until the last 2 years, there was no part of my brain that ever imagined a better version of myself in the future. Like actually visualized it and thought what it would feel like to have that confidence because I didn't believe I could do it. And so this loops back perfectly. It's like that will help the self-limiting belief because you'll start to actually plant images of no, 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 there is a version of me somewhere that can do the things that I wish I could do. And then going back to all the other stuff we're saying, you do the steps along the way and then you have more proof. Then you will actually be there. And then you'll have to do that again. But now you have the benefit of saying, I was there. I did these things. I actually got here. So now I have proof that I've done it in the past, which now makes it even easier to imagine my next change, right?
yeah, all of these obstacles are interconnected. And the big thing is to anticipate obstacles coming up and making a plan for it. Sometimes your plan won't always match up to whatever the obstacle or challenge is, um, but you have to be flexible and realize that these obstacles are for our growth, and they're necessary for our growth.
Give yourself a shorter time frame to do it. Take things that you need to get done. Oh no.